Kia ora koutou katoa. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this community research webinar, Complex Projects, Short Stories. With me, Jan Hind of Community Research, and Moya Sayre-Jones, the story activist. So that just leaves me now to ask, is there a doctor in the house?
There is indeed. Hi, Jan.
Hi, Moya.
Thanks for inviting me along today. That's really great. You know I love New Zealand. From here in Australia. And so maybe we can just hit the ground running. What do you think? Jan, I'm going to ask you through this presentation to listen very carefully, because I'm going to put you on the hot seat occasionally to see whether you are listening and you haven't ducked off to make a cup of tea, something like that.
I'm feeling the heat.
Watch out. Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to this great opportunity for me to, rabbit on again about why I think stories are going to be useful for you. So today we're going to be focusing on stories for impact to use in your reporting. And look, the first thing I want to say, and we can virtually go to the first slide, I think, David, is that stories, we can actually think of stories and we can think about reporting as an obligation, or we can reframe that and think of it as an opportunity, a great opportunity to show off. And I actually think this is the key, is going to be the key to doing reporting well. And that is not to shy away from it, but to jump in. Because Jan said earlier, Jan, you said this is for the time poor, the cash strapped, the dedicated change makers. And that's true. But, you guys are not just time strapped, cash strapped, dedicated. You're also inspired and creative and enthusiastic and proud. And I know from working with you that you want to have fun. So let's have a little think about how to make your stories do that with you, because every time we are excited about the work we do, it transmits. Yeah, every time we tell a story about the impact of our work, people sit up and take notice. And when you're reporting, it's like a perfect opportunity for you guys to build your reputation, to actually put another little, instead of just talking about what you've done, you're actually setting the stage for what you can do by building your reputation and your expertise and showing off. During this this hour-long presentation, I'm going to send you away, I hope, with 3 simple tools that will really help, I think, in your story gathering efforts, and lots of ideas for your own creative responses of how to show the impact of what you do. So sit tight, keep your pen and paper handy, and honestly, get ready to have a good time. Now, this is the one other thing I want to talk to you about. Successful reporting, that is, if you report well using stories, you will leave people caring about the impact you're making, not just knowing about it. So the problem with the whole notion of reporting that I'd like to reframe with you is that it feels like it's like a little bit like we're reporting back to a headmaster or something. The whole word reporting is, it's difficult for me because it's really constrained, and I'd love to get rid of it and stop thinking of it as reporting and just think of it as sharing, celebrating, defining, all of those sorts of words. Because when we do that, people will not just understand what we do, but they will understand the organisation that we work with. Yeah? We want to leave funders thinking of us as the go-to organisation for this sort of work. We want to increase the circle of belief in us. They should feel the power of your vision, not just the numbers that you're achieving. And when we connect through stories, we're connecting with emotion as well as logic. And that's a powerful combination, I think. Okay, so have a look at this little slide by Simon Sinek. Your stories need to show your what, your how, and your why. So what I mean by that is what you do. Your stories do need to show what you do. You know, we're a service that provides support for young mums in our areas. We're a service that provides families who are supporting someone with a disability with networks and connections. That's what you do. How you do it is how your program or service runs. You know, we're open 7 days a week. You know, 9 to 5. We have really expert staff. You know, we are fantastic at what we do. We have great expertise. Why you do it, though, is the heart of the thing that comes through in your stories. Why do you do it? We need to show the need for why we do something. We need to show the need in the community through our stories to connect with people with the same values. And that will come through in your stories. Because the thing that happens with reporting, I think, is that we forget that there's a human on the other end of the line. We forget that the person who's reading this report gets bored like we do, gets excited like we do, gets inspired like we do. They are just another person. And so we have to use all of our persuasive tools and our tools of entertainment and so on to push that along. Yeah? So the best stories that you can tell are ones that will be remembered long after this story is told. Yeah? They don't just have to be about client success stories either. We're making stories every day that prove our organisations are making a difference. Okay, so we can bump along. I can see Jan there. Jan, hello. There you are.
Hi, Moya. I'm nodding. I'm loving your doodle.
Okay, I'm feeling a little bit disconnected with my audience. I hope that I'm not. I hope that you're getting it.
Let me tell you something, Moya. We have 102 viewers on Google Plus and 106 viewers on YouTube. I know it's a strange feeling when you feel like you're broadcasting to your office wall, but they're out there, and we're waiting for their questions to come in soon. Tell me what you have in your next slide. Hey.
Okay, so look, when we're talking about story, I think it's really easy to say when we're reporting on outcomes that we're just going to put some success stories of clients in there. And you know, that's really great, and I'm going to show you how to do that in this presentation. So it is important. But, you know, we're so much more. We don't have to rely or sometimes overuse, I think, our client stories, because if we're telling the what and the how, we also have to actually include in our stories elements of our own organisational success and the way we do stuff. So if we go to the next slide, I'd like to show you what makes for a happy ending. And when I say this, you can see this was a project actually I was involved with once of young mums, a photographic project. And when I think about the stories of an organisation, what does it take to make a happy ending for the people we serve? Well, it's our team, it's the way we form our programs, it's our innovative thinking, it's our expertise, it's our community connections, it's all of those things that you can see on that slide. Now, often we leave these out of the stories that we tell about our impact. And people tend to think, oh, the story's thin, you know, they're little stories. I hear that a lot from funders, actually. They say to me, look, when I talk to our organisations, I know they're doing great work, but when I read their outcome stories, they're very small and thin. So we need to put more of the way we do things, the way the client responds to that, all the people around it who are helping it, and the relationships that we're forming. So I'm going to show you a film in a moment, And in that film, I think we have covered the what, the how, and the why. Yeah? And I hope that we've got people caring at the end. Okay? So this is a film that we made in Australia a few years ago about a program for kids in a disadvantaged educational area. And as you watch it, I want you to have a look for 3 things. Jan, particularly, you better be watching carefully because I'm going to ask you in the end. Everyone, I'd like you to watch this film and just note any points of information about the what and the how that are coming through in this film. What the program is, how it works, yeah? So that's one thing, the information points. We could have that slide up, David, please, with the dogs watching the television. If you can get that up, that would be great. The second thing I'd like you to think about is the emotional connection. Can you identify a moment or two when you are leaning in emotionally to the story, when you are connecting, when you begin to feel yourself caring about the outcome? Engaged. So I'm asking you to look for information, what and the how. I'm asking you to think about when you're engaged. And finally, I'd like you to imagine yourself as a funder or a donor. Yeah? How lovely would that be to be a funder? Turn this around. But if you can imagine yourself as a funder, is there a moment when you believe in the success and impact of this program? Hopefully there's more than one. Okay, look, I hope you enjoy this. It's only about 4 minutes, and good watching, everyone.
All you have to do is let it out. Oh, oh. All you have to do is let it out. Oh,
Slow motion there.
So you've got all of these people in the one place, all researching on different stuff, and learning about the stuff they're researching and each other.
oh, all you have to do is let it out.
This didn't feel like school at all. It actually felt more like a VIP club.
All you have to do.
With this, you really get involved in it. Like, they make it more fun. Like, they make games and like better ways to learn about stuff.
That's false. Pseudonyms, questionnaires, qualitative, quantitative.
Skeptical.
Like ethical, I didn't even know about that word. I don't know what it meant. Does not cause any harm to anyone.
All you have to
Circles.
Triangle.
But like color, like
Shape.
shape, yeah. I thought about like eating them.
I got green. That was good after because we got to eat it.
My project was on Facebook. Like, how many people use it? What do people think the right age group for Facebook should be?
Computer viruses and how to create them and destroy them.
I've done the greenhouse gases research because I went to see if my teachers knew about it.
My project was about sexism, like, are boys really stronger than girls? I like reading a lot, so I want to know what other people think about it. Which is the best card to choose? Which one's the fastest?
Participants. I know this confidentiality.
Nah.
My hypothesis was that many people would go for the Ferrari and the Lamborghini.
I interviewed my dad. Yeah. It was a piece of cake.
We all got a little recorder, an audio recorder. I used questionnaires. qualitative questionnaires.
My hypothesis was right because many people did go for them.
It was fun to actually get the results and then putting it in a report.
Just let it out. Oh.
My hypothesis was that boys are stronger than girls because I think they are, but they just don't need to rub it in.
My conclusion was that my hypothesis was wrong and that my teachers actually do know a fair bit about the greenhouse gases.
I didn't really find out my answer. Most of the research participants were girls because I couldn't really get any guys to do it.
All you have to do is just let it out.
When I went back to school, it was easier for me to learn in class because I'm more confident.
I think it'll make a difference. I basically learned when I do my research to cross-check it to make sure it's not hurting anybody.
It was very enjoyable, so I would like to do another one.
So after coming to here, it sort of taught me a lesson. Socialise with other people and not with computers or technology. Because they can't talk back to you, whereas people can.
Okay, thank you. Great. Jan, were you watching carefully?
I was, Moya.
Okay, so what did you think of that, and what were the information points? What were the emotional connections? What did you care?
Now, I have to tell you something, Moya. I have been a funder in the past. I'm a soft touch. I'm a sucker for this stuff. I was feeling the emotion all the way through. What did I see? I got lots of information from that. I could see the range of partners that were involved. Something was going off in that school. The young people were talking in a new way about themselves and how they were relating to their learning. They were relating differently to each other. We could see that somebody was introducing some new teaching and learning styles in the background. We can assume, you know, they were out in the playground, they were being physical, they were using games. I saw some really ethical, responsible work. There was food there for them in the background. They were being asked to use language carefully around ethics and care and relationship. And I think we can assume as well that those were young people who've moved to a new place in their education and a new understanding of their capability of achieving. And you know, in terms of the shift that we're wanting to make in our world with young people, that looked really powerful. I could see it with my own eyes. Thanks, Moya. That was lovely. Did I pass, by the way?
You did pass. That it was an interesting project actually because it had actually been carried out a year before. As you saw on one of those slides, we got together a year later. So it was actually quite a hard project to make in that, you know, the kids are actually, it's a long time since they did it, so to get them back into talking about it and feeling it so that we could shoot some new footage. A lot of there were two lots of footage in that though. There was the archival stuff. So one of the things that the kids did was they shot every session together on their smartphones or some recording devices that were given to them. So it's not so easy to see, but the kids, there's an age difference of a whole year in there, so there's some authentic footage, and then we recreated some of those exercises like the chocolates and stuff. So that was the value of the people who were running that program wanting to document what was going on. And that was very valuable. And also we could show that again to the kids to take them back into the space. So when we asked them about the experience, even though a year is a long time for kids of that age, they got right back into the feeling, and so their responses were, you know, much fresher than they might have been. We had a few things working for us in that. Can I just say, Jan, you can't underestimate the power of the music in that bit. Music is really important in creating a story. And the other thing that was really important was to actually focus in on a couple of really lovable characters. So that young man turned into our hero for that film, and the girl who talked about sexism. So we really remember them as characters, and so we didn't have to give the same time to everybody. We wanted to tell the story of a couple in the group. Yeah.
So let me just jump in there. Let me reflect back what I've heard, because my other question as I was watching that video was, how can we apply this in our own practice as storytellers? Can we make a video like this for ourselves? So I've heard you say that the majority of the work was done using our own devices. The majority was done with our iPhones and our own cameras.
No, that's not true. No, it was not the majority. The majority was shot a year later. There would have been about 20 or 30% of that was archival footage, maybe even less. But it was really important archival footage because we got the feelings of them. So would you be able to shoot a film of that sort of quality on an iPhone? Yes, you could shoot it on an iPhone if you're a good shooter. That level of filmmaking is probably one whereby, unless you've got a lot of capacity internally, it would be very difficult to get that level of care. So the director that I used in there was an ABC director. So, you know, to actually pull a story together is tricky like that. That said, I really believe, and I'm going to show you a film later, that we can achieve an amazing amount ourselves. So the things that made that easier was that there was a lot of material that was gathered during the project that was useful, that allowed us to actually think, okay, as filmmakers coming in and helping, we knew the points to hit. We did have the archival footage, and we gave it time. We gave it a day or 2 days, I think, of extra shooting and planning and stuff like that. But it wasn't expensive, but they did need professional help. And sometimes you will need that.
So one quick question for you before we moved on to our next slide. Just one quick question is, how has that made a difference for them? Can you tell us?
Well, it's been really important for them because that topic, child-led research, has been really difficult for the organisation to understand. The organisation that created that program has been wanting to actually push that philosophy of child-led research into their early education and other areas of the biz, but it's a difficult thing to explain because people think they're already doing it by listening to kids. So this was very good internally to show how much power we need to give kids for child-led research. Oh, yeah. They used it also for partnership building with other centres. They pushed it out to a national program, and also they used it as a conference lead-in for one of their main researchers to take to the UK, and it was a real hit there.
Hey, so I do have a further question. That's great to hear. And we've had a lovely question come in that I want to put to you quickly, and it is relevant. And this is from Komati. I hope I got your name right. Moya, she says the emotional expressions are great, and they're obviously contagious in a positive way. However, it rarely happens, I just hope I have this right, in the academic world where objectivity is expected. How can we apply this to real-world research? So what's the bridge between all of the emotional connection and the positivity in a video and the expectations in the academic world around, dare I say, real research? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting term, real research, isn't it? From a story perspective, qualitative research is real research, and I think increasingly academics are starting to realise that their findings are pointless if nobody wants to read or watch them. I work with academics a lot now, helping them to actually communicate the power of the things that they have found. We can't expect people to be engaged with our findings if they're bored. And I really believe that there's a generation that will eventually die of researchers who think the numbers are enough. Maybe we just have to outlive them. I don't know. But I do know that we should keep pushing on and find the most imaginative ways to communicate our findings.
Thanks, Moya. Hey, take us to your next slide.
Okay, where are we going? Okay, oh yeah, have a little look at this, guys. It's a sort of a simple story structure that you might be able to use that in terms of writing and filmmaking, because the story structure of that film you just saw was pretty simple, similar to a story structure you might use in a written form or even in an oral form, okay? So, story structure. You know, once upon a time there were a group of kids who lived in a disadvantaged area, and there were a group of researchers who thought, you know, I think these kids are not learning in a way that will, you know, excite them and inspire them. Let's try something different. Because every day these kids would go to school and they'd be told what to do. They would not be in control of their own learning. And they were losing heart and losing hope and falling behind. These kids were going to fall through the gap. But then one day these researchers said, let's actually create a program for 6 months. Let's actually focus our attention on this group of kids and see whether our child-led research would actually make a difference to them. And so we got them together, and each week they came and they learned all sorts of skills. We were able to experiment with different real research methods. And we watched the children grow and change. And we watched things that we didn't expect happen. We saw their social connections improve. We saw them taking control of their own learning. We saw them fronting up every week. We saw them putting up their hands to do it again the next year. Until finally we had something that we could say, this works, and we had a program that we knew was ready to roll out to other areas. And so ever since then, that's what we've been doing. We've been hunting around, finding some funding, wanting to help other kids just like the ones that you've seen in this video. And the moral of the story is kids deserve better than what they're receiving, and our sort of researchers are just the people to give it to them, or something like that. You can see, as I retold that story of the film with this story structure, we had the old normal. Points 1 and 2 is what was happening before. Then points 3 and 4 is a change begins and what that change looks like, how it unfurls. Then point 5 is the results. Ever since then, we've seen this. And then point 6 is our pulling it all together, emphasizing the impact, and the moral of the story is. So it's a classic story structure. Yeah? I wonder if I was to ask you to pick up your pens on a bit of paper and just right now, while I wait, experiment with this structure and see if you could describe your program or service or something that you need to report on in these 6 steps. You only need sort of like a sentence or each, or a bullet point after each thing to see where you go. What was happening? What was the change and how was it seen? What was the result? And what do we make of that? Okay, go for it, guys. Okay, how did you go, Jan?
I did great.
Okay, obviously that's super quick and stupid, and through the magic of television we can't see that you guys might still be scratching your head and saying, hang on, I've just at once upon a time. But you can see, I think, that every story, if we actually think of it as a story, that we're setting up the hero. What was going on for that hero? What change happened to make that hero's life change? And what did that change look like in the end? That's all you need. Because have a little look at the next slide, please, David. And I would just like to show you, with some more clarity, what a classic story structure looks like that is great for your success story writing, filming, reporting, telling. Okay, so your work is the bridge to the new story. So you see, I drew this, by the way, and so no compliments, please. Okay, so on the left is the old story. Someone's going along with the old story, yeah? to get to the news story, they can fall in the gap. You guys provide the bridge to the news story. And that is the center of your what and your how and your why. And the why really travels right along that line. The old story, an injustice, is part of our why because we want to change it. The bridge is part of our why because we're so good at it. The news story of the why is because our community in New Zealand, that person will be so much better as they move forward. So you, in all your story gathering, you have to make sure that you don't leave out the middle, the bridge, because that's your reputation builder. How and what you do and the changes that happen on the way to there. And that's also where the drama is, because when you look at that sort of thing, you know it's scary what happens when someone falls through the cracks and doesn't have the advantage of a bridge. So, and will that person be able to climb out if they're already in there? We don't know. So that's that beautiful drama and tension. And often with the things that I read, we move from old story to new story, and we leave out the no story, the bit in the middle where all the work's being done. Yeah? So make sure you value that. That's also the point where you're celebrating your organisation, you're building the reputation of your organisation, and you're learning what to do better next time. Okay? Now, I just like to give you something that I give to the people that I work with and they love. And they print it out and they put it in their wallet so that if ever they're in a situation where they're going to be able to form a story, I have an interview, talk to someone, they are reminded about the things that they need to ask. So it's the next slide, please, David. We're looking at, yeah, here we go. So if you're in a situation, and you're always in a situation, I imagine, guys, when you're with your clients or your partners and you want to share the story of, you want them to share the story of their work with you, these are the 4 steps. What you're asking them, what was life like before? How did the change start? What happened then? And what has this meant to you? 4 simple questions to ask of anybody. Someone comes in, they drop into your office a couple of months after they've left your program. You might sit down with them and say, listen, I've got my smartphone here. I'd love to ask you about the story of your work with us. Please don't ask them for their story, because you're asking for the story of their work with you. To ask for their story is sort of too big, I think, and let's be specific about why we're asking, because we are asking for impact. We're not asking for their story to listen without agenda. We do have an agenda in this story gathering. So if you were to print out that little slide, what was like before? What was the old normal? What was like life before? What was the old normal? What was the old story? How did change start? What brought you to our service? What made you realize you needed a change? What allowed you to imagine a different life? That sort of stuff. And what was the trigger? And then what happened? That's when we're asking about, okay, what changes what did you experience? How did you feel the changes take place? What happened? And then the 4th is, what has this meant to you? So how is your life different? What's the new story? So can I suggest that for those of you who might be less confident about writing or interviewing and so on, if you let yourself off the hook and actually say, I'm going to start with the simplest thing. I'm just going to, it will be enough if when I talk to a client or I talk to a parent or whoever it is, if I just cover these 4 areas of questions, I'll have the basis of a story. Yeah? That's all you need, actually. The beginning, the middle, and the end. Yay! Okay.
Hey, Maya,
Jan.
so can I ask you some questions now? Can I?
Yeah.
Could you give me some pointers as to how I would use that? Because that's a really interesting practical tool. I'm thinking of the groups that we're here for, which is predominantly the small, medium-scale groups who are now charged with gathering data, evidencing their success with a government that's saying if we don't see the evidence, you don't get the money. How can we now apply in a practical way? Can you give me some pointers? Imagine I have a team of people that I'm working with and we might want to be gathering some data. How can we apply those pointers?
Yeah, well, what I'd say is, first of all, you have to know why you're gathering any story. Yeah, there's got to be a reason for gathering it. So just to have a feel-good moment with someone is a different thing to gathering stories with intent to pass on, and in a more rigorous sort of setup. So as people who listen a lot and listen to a lot of stories and stuff, we have to, for ourselves, define the difference between listening as a family worker, as a program director, with that ear, and listening as someone who wants to pass on findings. So it's sort of different. We have to have intention. Those various points you could actually look. A smartphone is a story gatherer's best friend. You can use your smartphone to make voice recordings, to take a video shot, to take a little bit of video, or to just take a standard shot. If you have a smartphone in your pocket, you can always gather a story. Okay? So, for example, the beginning, the middle, and the end, you might even gather at different stages. You know, when people first start your program, you might use that as an opportunity to gather a part of their story about their old story, why they're here. Yeah? Then at some stage during their time with you, or at some event or at one of the sessions, in a story gathering, think, well, how is it going for? What has the change? What are you experiencing now? What's working, what's not? Just in a similar way that you would as a caregiver or as a family worker. And then at the end of the time, or post it, just like you would in any survey, then you're sitting down and you're talking to people and you're asking for the end of the story. And then if you feed back to them what you remember of the beginning, the middle, and the end, you've got a beautiful reflective story moment, which is a gift to the people. I want to show you something. Look at this. Can you see that? Is that showing up?
Yes. Hold it up a little higher. Move it to your left a little. Cool. What's in there?
This is a timeline. This is more of my great drawing, guys. But this is like a little timeline. And can you see what I've done in it is, well, you can't probably see, but I've just sketched out a program over a year and what might be the opportunities for story gathering and different sorts of elements of the story that I might like to collect and put somewhere that will be useful when I have to report on our impact. So I've got on there our first meeting, I think, on here. What have I got? I've got to talk to you about this. Oh, that's the induction I've got in there. And then I've got, that was in January. And then there's a first camp of people getting together. And for myself, I draw little dialogue bubbles when it's just going to be talking to people. And then I might have, in March, there was a mentors meetup that I've got. And for that thing, I've got video. I'm thinking that I'll hand out some story cards. And then I've just planned it all the way through to the presentation and the end. And on that, I think, okay, what can I gather and what might be good ways to gather? And I make sure that when those points are happening, I am there, or someone in our organisation is there, to take a photo, to ask some questions, to hand out a story card, to gather some media, anything that might be interesting, and to put it all together in a folder or even a physical box, so that I've actually got an archive of that story as it's developing. So when I talk about what you should gather, I'm really talking about tell it with pictures. So that's this next slide, please, David. Because we can't underestimate the value of images. Yeah, and of course that's a can of worms with our communities in terms of consents and so on. A whole nother webinar, I would suggest. But a picture tells 1,000 words or adds to our data. So, for example, in real research, we would not use emotive things like this to get our message across. We just have the graphs and the data and the text. But I say to you that if you actually want your stories to do many things in reporting, you need to tell it with pictures as well. And sometimes a picture will bring people to a caring position that a number won't. Yeah? So let's have a look at an example, please. The next slide. This is a women's refuge that we worked in Australia, and we wanted to leave people in no doubt of what this organisation stood for and the energy and the passion behind their work. So this is their landing page. So you can see by choosing that image, which they often use on a whole lot of their materials that they share with potential business partners and funders and so on, it's actually connecting them completely with their why. We know what their why is, and if our why, if we believe in the same values, is the same as what we're seeing in that picture, we are hooked. It is emotional. If I wanted to go just with numbers, I wouldn't have that image, and I might have, two women per week in Australia are killed by a partner. That's also something. Or, it might be, there are 42% more women seeking refuge help now than there were in 2014. Sure, it's a number. It's a number. It shocks us, but does it connect with us emotionally? Do we actually care about the number enough, or do we shy away from it? To choose an image that is empowering will bring people on side and really expand your story. So you need to think about what photographs you have or what photographs you can source. Lots of free photos out there that might speak well to your service. You don't all need to only use, this was a stock photo that we used and we coloured up with a designer. It's the selection of it. Yeah? Next slide, please, David. Okay, you can show, you might not be really great at writing text. It might not even be something that you're that interested in. But you might love a little bit of design, or you yourself might be a visual person where things make more sense to you if you present them visually. This is an impact report. It's not something that we did. It's from a Canadian service. But I sort of love it because I think, first of all, it shows the data in a way that we're really open to. It's attractive to look at, yeah? But the middle picture there of the work of the women doing stuff is the thing that actually tells the big story of what they do, and the figures on the outside are just confirming the impact of the feeling of what they do. So you guys could do this really easily, with something, and there's all those great programs now like Canva that you probably use to create infographics, which makes it really easy. And, when we work with not-for-profits that don't have much dosh, the cash strapped, the time poor, what we do is we lean on artists that we know who are connected to the issue. We try to invite them into the circle, and and they help us. They help us to do better, and once we do a bit better, then the next time we put in a funding application round, we make sure we've got money to pay a designer or a videographer or a filmmaker, whatever we need. We are now encouraging all not-for-profits, no matter what the size, to make sure that if your funders say they want you to report to a certain standard, that you actually have the funds in your proposal to allow you to do that. Because it's not your fault that you don't know how to do this stuff. Okay, so let's go, David, to it's all about the preparation. First up, make a timeline of when you're starting a program, or even if you're in the middle of a program, actually still make the timeline if you can from the beginning, all the key events, engagement steps, engagement opportunities with the people that you're serving or the community, and what you're hoping for. So put that clearly on, and then sit down with your team or your trusted other and have a little think about what could we gather there that might tell a bit of the story. How does this tell the story? Yeah. So obviously if you're doing an environmental project, you would have on your timeline before and after pictures. Yeah. So that's really a key thing. What does the riverbed look like before we started? What does it look like while we're working? What does it look like at the end? What do people look like on the first time they come? What do they say about their hopes? What do they say about what they're feeling halfway through the project? How proud are they feeling at the end? So you're just looking at the scope. Now, include a story opportunity in all your surveys is the next point. Too often when we do surveys, particularly for research, we're just really not giving people the opportunity for reflection to give us not only more insight, but some quotes that will be really valuable for us when we're laying out or telling the story. So always improve and include a narrative piece in surveys and stuff. And if you're working with people who have difficult literacy skills or other health issues, then always try to include an opportunity where you or one of your team sits down with them and records a narrative. Okay. You need, if we are to respond to what's being asked of us by our funders, we do need to build your team's story skills, and that can happen, of course, through things like this webinar and other things that community research is offering, and their great website, but also for any opportunities that you have, and that includes, for example, if anyone in your team is a very good photographer, or if you have a child who does excellent selfies, why don't you invite that person, whoever it is in the community, into your office, for example, for a 1-hour workshop on how to take better iPhone photographs. Yeah? So it doesn't have to be that you're always going out. You can invite people in to share community knowledge to help you build the skills, because really you just need to take a good photograph, you need to know how to ask some questions, and you need to be able to use your voice record thing on a smartphone if you have one. Okay, make a story archive box or folder. I encourage my my groups to actually have a physical box as well as a digital box. So then in a physical box you'd throw in any paper invitations, posters. If people come into the office and you're going to get them to fill in a little story card, or they write something down, you can throw it all in. Kids' drawings, anything that might be useful, throw it into the box. And a digital folder for any images that are happening. Make a Dropbox folder and just keep putting, so that you're not looking through your phone. Oh, there was that great shot that we took at the induction. Oh, where's that photograph? No, we have to get a bit organized. Think about it in that way. Start regular meetings with your board, with your community, with your team, with a story share. What have we seen happen since we last met that proves what we're doing is working or not? Always record with your iPhone or your smartphone, or have someone taking notes for that story share, so that, because we lose them, those stories just go, we forget them. And remember, a smartphone is a story gatherer's best friend. I've got lots more to tell you, of course. I hope that we meet again, or you jump on to onlyhuman.com.au and connect with me.
Yeah, and we'll send you that link at the end as well, onlyhuman.com.au. Really good point, because Moya is also going to invite you to sign up if you want to hear more stuff from her. Shortly I'm going to show you some resources that will be useful to you in your work, and for those who are leaving this webinar inspired, we can take you to the next stage and resource you. We're going to go to the WhatWorks website, www.whatworks.org.nz. This website has been created for you. It provides you with, let's have a look at the top, the tools, the resources, and the case studies from other groups like yourselves across Aotearoa who are using resources that help them evidence the work that they're doing. It helps you gather robust data and information and tell a real story about the doing and the difference that you're making. This website's been designed for you. If you'd like to share a story of your own, or if you'd like to be a case study, let us know. At the end of this webinar, we're going to play a short 3-minute video to introduce you to the What Works website and to tell you what's on here. So we're going to go back to Moya now. And Moya, let me ask you again, what about those situations when you're dealing with people whose stories are sensitive or confidential? Can you quickly advise us how you might deal with that?
Yeah, well, you know, 90% of my work is in those areas, so I really understand that, and never more so than recently with our women's refuge, because not only were it's such a dangerous scenario that not only are we unable to show or reveal the people who are in the women who are using the refuge, the location of the refuge, what the refuge looks like, or even the people who work at the refuge. So it's a totally, you know, blank situation. I'll include the link to that website to show you the sort of things, the way we're showing that. But essentially I use a whole range of de-identification methods, and I think that if you tell a story well using the person's own words, and we de-identify their names, their locations, and some salient features, we can do really well with that. It's always more challenging not to be able to show a person in terms of emotional engagement, but we often work with artists to paint things that connect, and we use when we take photos, we try to take photos of things that are important to the people, artifacts that are important to them. Essentially, though, the text has to work so much harder, so we do have to be working. I always work from a transcript of the person telling the story themselves, because what we at least get is their cadence, and we do get a sense of them through their stories and their images. But I do have a ethics guide, Jan, that I will send along for you, that you can send to everyone if you like, which does cover all the things that we need to do to protect people's not only their identity, but make sure that they're in a good space to actually participate in story sharing, and that it will be good for them as opposed to detrimental. It's got to be good for the person who we're speaking with.
Thanks, Moya. And well, I have to say, as a survivor of domestic violence, I absolutely understand that need for confidentiality, so it's great to see people really observing ethics in their work like that. I've got one more question for you here. Now, I'm struggling a little bit to understand it, but it's from Alison Sutton, and let's check. I hope, Alison, I'm doing this credit. Moya, any comments about telling the gap stories that are not positive? And Alison is saying, we get challenged sometimes about not being strengths-based. When we're Any comments about telling the gap stories that are not positive when we're trying to draw attention to education challenges? Is there anything you wanted to respond to there?
Yeah, well, I'd like to actually understand the story behind that question a little bit more. So when we say the gap story, if we're telling that, is that we're telling the story of need? Do you think, Jan, we're telling the story of the need? Is that the gap?
You might come back to us with a supplementary question there, but not telling the gap stories, well articulated. Not telling the gap stories, about telling the gap stories that are not positive when we're trying to draw attention to education challenges.
Oh, right. So that's a story of need. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think you know, infographics are a great way to tell a story of need like that. I wouldn't put human story myself. I wouldn't ask people to tell the story of how hard life is for them myself. That's not my chosen Way to go. Because I do like to, I might ask what people want, what they're hoping for, and what's currently standing in the way. But I would always have an element of shining some light on that person's situation and possibility. So possibility. So it can still be a story of this is the gap, this is where the need is. But to show the value of change, we need to shine light on what the person wants or the possibility. Yeah. So if you have a look at a whole lot of any sort of videos that come out of Oxfam or any of those agencies working in Africa and so on, they are all the time dealing with the gap story, but they present the stories in a way that show that change is possible. Yeah. And that people need and deserve the change. So we don't make the people as victims, because that's the problem with a gap story. If we don't do that, it's just like victim story, victim story, victim story. And I'm not in the business, and I don't think you guys are in the business of presenting the people we serve as victims.
Actually, Alison's just replied to us, and I think you actually captured that perfectly. She's saying, yeah, how do we show that need as part of a funding pitch when we're trying to show a child who's not doing well? So I'm hearing you say people respond better if you show, like that woman, the photo of the woman that we saw where she said, I'm not powerless, and it elicits a different kind of response. And talk about people's potential to achieve. It's possible that you've frozen altogether there, Moya, and that might be perfectly timed as well. It's funny, I had one more question for you, but I think we can finally assume that everybody's logged on in Byron Bay now, and we've lost Moya. Maybe you
I'm sorry.
Are you still there?
I am still here. Can you hear me? No.
Yes, we can. Your face has been frozen for a while. Hey, I have one more quick question for you, and then we're going to go to the What Works video. Well, so my question for you, Moya, is, gosh, I'd love to keep asking you questions all day, actually, because it draws out such beauty and strength from your ideas. But people are going back to their desks now. They're inspired. What advice do you have for them to get across, the inevitable gap between going away very inspired, and then the thing, if you're the only person in your organization who's attended this webinar and it sort of disappears once you get back to your busyness, what's your piece of advice now to that person?
Well, I would actually start from going back into the office and actually implementing a thing in meetings whereby we share a story at the start, so actually get people into a story mode. And I would say to them, I would have as the first thing, what are we proud of with what we're doing? Actually asking people that, and to get stories about what we're proud of. And I'd make up a poster, and I'd put it up, and I'd actually have the little people with their stories up on that poster, and I'd start from them so that they get the feeling of what it's like to remember and share positive stories of what they're doing. Are you still there, Jan?
I am. Isn't that great? That's a beautiful, there we are. Anybody who's now going into their tea break or their lunch hour, think about how you can do that with your team. And by way of conclusion, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. We ran over a little bit, but it was so good we couldn't stop. I hope you'll log on for our next event, which is with Trevor McGlinchey and Garth Nolan-Foreman. They're going to present the research called Outcomes Plus. It shows the difference that we're making as a community sector in terms of our additional outcomes. And they're really going to have a good dig around into how we as a sector should respond to government's new contracting policies, the new investment culture, how we should show the hidden outcomes that make the real difference in our work. In the meantime, it remains for me to thank Moya, thank David, thank Sarah and Lassa and Portawa in the background, and David, to ask if you'll just take us to the closing video, which is to show you how you can use the What Works website in your work. We hope you'll do that, and we hope you'll see you again. Ta-da.
Welcome to What Works. This website can help you figure out what difference you and your organization are making. Take Tui, for example. Tui is currently under some pressure, swirling in questions, challenging his organization's very existence. Are we making a difference for the people we serve? Could we be more effective? How can we show real results? TUI's organisation runs a program designed to help unemployed young people develop work skills. Now TUI's being asked to prove that what they're doing is helping, but he doesn't really know how to go about it. What Works has a series of tools designed to make this easier. You're one step ahead of TUI, given you've been introduced to us already. Our homepage contains some useful information to help you begin. The Consider tab is a good place to get some basic information about what evaluation is and how to do it properly. When it comes to proving that what you're doing is having impact, you need to walk through some basic steps. The Get Started tab contains a number of resources to help you formulate a good evaluation plan, from defining what you need to evaluate to making sure the findings get used. Now that TUI has identified what he needs to know, he can move on to choosing some data gathering and evaluation tools. The Tools tab is divided into two sections. The first is designed to help you choose the right framework or approach. The Methods, Tools, Techniques section contains the different ways of collecting data. TUI's stuck for where to go next and needs help to choose the right tool. To help with that, we have a handy Tools and Approaches matrix, which contains an overview of popular tools and approaches that can be filtered in various ways. TUI thinks he's found a good framework and toolset that matches his organization's evaluation plan, but we'll have a bit of a look through the various case studies under the Stories tab first. It contains a selection of user stories about organizations' experiences using particular tools, so you can see what has worked for them. We're always looking for new stories. If you have an example to share, please contact Community Research. TUI can see organizations similar to his using the approach he picked, so he can see how it's going to work for him. With a good plan and tool set in place, TUI is well on the way to answering those original questions. Most importantly, TUI's organisation will build good evidence about their outcomes and learn from the evidence gathered. What works best when organisations like TUI's share their experiences with the wider community so other groups can benefit from the information too. The Share tab contains guidance on becoming a learning organisation and ways to share what you learn with others. There are tips on how to present your findings to service users, your board, funders and the general public. TUI is going to take some more time to explore the website fully. We encourage you to take some time to have a look through the resources and see if they can help you with your work.